And so one of the things that has been a topic of conversation is when you have that conversation and it impacts not only your relationship with your spouse, but you have to have the conversation with your kid to say, hey, we can't afford to do this, 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 and this. And that's part of, I think, where the mechanism is tested, not necessarily between the husband and a wife, but the husband and a wife and the family unit, and how those conversations financially impact the family unit.
I think that's the heart of it. This is not about one bill, one argument, or one person failing to earn enough. It is about three economic pressures entering the relationship at the same time. Wages that no longer support the expected life, housing that consumes more than the household budget, and the pressure to keep purchasing your way into belonging. Those forces change what couples can carry, what parents can promise, how long children can remain dependent, and who gets blamed when the math stops working. In this politics segment, we are looking at how economic pressures move from the larger system into the family unit, and why builders must recognize the structure before they mistake its consequences for a relationship failure.
And that's a great pivot to politics and the first receipt of politics, wage stagnation. Wage stagnation creates a gap between what people are expected to afford and what their income actually supports. So the lifestyle expectation keeps rising, but the paycheck may not. That gap becomes a relational pressure. Most divorces happen because of financial issues or financial pressures. And that can be that the couple may work full time, but still feel like they're behind on certain things. The family may argue over money because everyone is stretched. The adult children may need help. The parents can no longer provide, or parents may need help from their own children. And so you feel that burnout, you feel that stretching, you feel individuals needing certain things all the time. And financial obligations can have a real impact on the family unit, because it does impact those vacations we talked about. It does impact how you show up on social media, or what it is that you say with respect to social media. When wages do not match expectations, people tend to blame each other. And it could be that you're holding us back. I need you to get a better job. I need you to get a job. I need you to do something that provides more so that we can either get a bigger house or kids can go to this particular school. What we saw, especially this week, we had the Mecca, Howard University, that had an incident happened with some kiddos who were unfortunately removed. They were given access or granted access or accepted to the university. And because the family could not afford to pay in time to meet some of the obligations that they had, they were removed from the roster and told that they were no longer in the incoming freshman class. And this is 2 weeks before school starts. So those financial pressures are real. And so the question I have for you is this: do you think people often turn economic pressure into relationship conflict because it's easier to blame the person closest to them rather than looking at the structure of their life and what it is that they can be doing to help mitigate some of these situations?
I'm going to speak hypothetically because that was not my situation. I made 100% sure that my partner and I would not be fighting over money. We may fight over other things, but money was never going to be an issue for us. So the communication up front was very, very clear, and what we did in terms of money was very clear. Like, that wasn't a thing with us. I'm going to speak hypothetically and just based on some conversations I've had with friends. I appreciate that you framed it in terms of schooling for kids, because I think that's the big one. Not that we have to go get a bigger house or a vacation. It's real when it becomes the kids can't go to college. Maybe you've planned for it and maybe somebody lost a job or maybe something happened. The price of getting into university keeps rising. So it doesn't adjust with your income. It's just going to keep rising. If something happens, then that can impact your kid's ability to go to school. And that's a problem that I would be concerned with. But I do think that it comes back to communication. And like I said, my ex-husband and I, that's the one area that we did okay in, was the money part. But it was, what can we afford? What can we do? What do we need to adjust? What do we, whatever? And then we both knew that we paid half of everything. I paid my half, he paid his half. So there was no like, okay, you pay all the bills and I ride horses. It was, both of us paid. And then when the kids were going to school, we split it. Like he paid the utilities, I paid the private school, but it was always equal. And I think that it goes back to having a foundation of trust and communication. And I'll just relate it back to like what my son said. Hey, you know what? I'm working part-time and I can't afford this. Can we do this? And just having that conversation. If that person can't receive it, especially before you get married, if they can't receive that or whatever, then, maybe they're not the person for you. And let me tell you a quick little story. So the kid and I were having lunch today, and he was telling me that story about, I can't afford this, or when we would have this conversation. I said, I couldn't imagine growing up and then some guy telling me, okay, well, what's your I'm sorry, what happened now? I said, but I think that perhaps women of my generation may have put a lot of pressure on these men to support us in terms of like taking us out, doing whatever, showing us these experiences. And I took it for granted. I said, no wonder a lot of them were like 19 and selling drugs. Like they didn't have that kind of money, but I was like, well, find it. Like, if you want to take me out, find this money. And I was like, I wonder if we did put a lot of pressure on men to provide these experiences for us. Never crossed my mind that they didn't have the money. Because I was like, well,
I think two things can be true. I think when you talk about a relationship and you talk about just a male female and you're starting out in a relationship or starting out in a marriage, there can be financial constraints as you're trying to navigate who's going to carry what and what your household structure is going to look like in terms of finances. I think most folk that I talk to, and this has been a huge topic of conversation in my groups over the last couple of days, is when you have kiddos who are migrating to college, and college is expensive, and you have that strain that's on a family to be able to afford that college. Maybe they can't afford the first choice of the kiddo. Maybe they can't attend a Howard University, but they can attend community college for a couple of years and then possibly, if they're fortunate enough, be able to transfer in. Or they can attend a smaller college that is not as expensive, or they're having to rely on scholarships and things of that sort because the family financially can't foot the bill with respect to school. And so one of the things that has been a topic of conversation is when you have that conversation and it impacts not only your relationship with your spouse, but you have to have the conversation with your kid to say, hey, we can't afford to do this, and this. And that's part of, I think, where the mechanism is tested, not necessarily between the husband and a wife, but the husband and a wife and the family unit and how those conversations financially impact the family.
I think that's the heart of it, because for me, and I know a lot of my friend groups, we want our kids to have the best experience. We don't want them to have to sacrifice or suffer because of choices that we made. One of the conversations that we had to have with the youngest one is like, look, you have an opportunity to do dual credit at high school, and that's going to save us a ton of money. Or you can go to the local community college here. You can get all your core classes taken care of and then transfer into university. If you do that, then we'll have the money to allocate for you a car and then help you with your first place to live. And so there are going to have to be some sacrifices because we are not Jeff Bezos. We have to have these conversations, but that's a hard conversation because you want your kids to have the best experience. I also want my kid to understand finances. I want them to understand sacrifice. I want them to understand that life isn't always easy. And so there are choices that you have to make. So having that conversation with, as uncomfortable as it was so good. He's a good kid anyway. He's not a wasteful kid in terms of spending. I'm probably more wasteful in terms of spending than he is. He understood it, and we all together, all three of us, made the decision of what he needed to do. We talked about this 3 episodes ago, giving them the opportunity to develop skills that are going to help them into adulthood. And so having that conversation with them and bringing them in, helping them to understand the landscape in terms of finances, choices, whatever, can help them to grow or develop those skills that are going to help them be successful adults.
We're coming up on August, which is one of my favorite months. School starts and you have summer that's winding down and you have fall that's right around the corner. I associate August, especially that second week of August, with going to college. And this is the first time that I had the experience of going and being an adult, but at the same time having adult conversations and adult pressures. Anyone who attended the Mecca knows that Howard University has a reputation, fairly and unfortunately, of being an institution that can piss you off with respect to financial aid and finances. And I remember my freshman year, and we talked about this, I believe, in one of the previous episodes, you hope that your grants, your loans, or whatever it is that you are using to pay for school, it's there to be able to fund your education. And so I almost had like a deja vu moment this week with all the shit that happened with Howard and these kids, because you want them to have a great experience at the Mecca. And there's a segment of the population that will go, it's a rite of passage for them to experience some of the stuff with respect to financial aid and finances at Howard University. And yeah, I get it. I get that we want to romanticize some of that. But the other side of that is that it still can set a bad precedent for how you go about handling your business. That said, that's the university's aspect. And then there's the parental aspect. And the parental aspect is having those conversations with those kiddos to say, hey, there's some sacrifices that we need to make, and there's some things that we need to do so you are able to attend this university. I remember it may have been sophomore year. I had enough money to pay for school, had enough money to pay for books, enough money to pay for the first semester in terms of housing. And I did not have money to pay for the second semester of housing. So I moved out of the dorm the second semester, which in retrospect was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I moved in a house with 4 guys and they were lifelong friends, and then ultimately moved into an apartment with the gentleman who was my best friend. And that was life-changing because it gave me an opportunity to do some adult stuff, to be an adult, to understand that you had to afford rent, you had to work, you had to do X, Y, and Z, you had to make it work. And so from that aspect, I think that there are lessons to be learned when we talk about wage stagnation and how that has a trickle-down impact on everything. And as a culture, I think it allows us to talk about finances and making certain that we have all those I's dotted and all those T's crossed, so that when we are making those decisions that can impact us for the rest of our lives, that we have all the information. Receipt number 2 in terms of politics is housing affordability. I just talked about getting my first apartment, and the housing affordability is the biggest structural pressure underneath relationship expectations, regardless of whether or not it's a romantic relationship or a friendship. It's having the conversation to make certain that you can afford where you're trying to stay, and that you're able to buy furniture and continue to maintain where it is that you're staying. The housing market is something that we hear a lot of with respect to millennials and Gen Z, and how you have a lot of them that can afford to move out of their parents' house, or can't afford not to have roommates, or can't afford to buy a house. This economy and the shit that's going on with this economy has put a lot of these individuals under a lot of pressure. It's made it harder for a lot of them to climb that ladder, achieve what we consider to be the dream in terms of home ownership. But at the same time, it's allowed them to look at some of the issues that some of us that may be homeowners have faced in terms of being able to maintain a home and the pressures that come with that. And so the question that I have for you, Ms. Lynn, is how did housing costs change the way you approached marriage, family, independence, or after your divorce, and the decisions that you made in terms of whether you want to stay in your house or move someplace else?
So all of those things. So I moved out of my family house when I was 17 because I'm a hothead. So I lived by myself.
Oh, even then? Jesus.
Yes, I was still in high school, so I moved out at 17. And my mom and dad had gotten a divorce, and just
You moved out, or you kicked out?
I moved out. And so I moved out at 17, and So I've been taking care of myself for a long time. And then when I turned 26, I wanted to get married. Well, I wanted to have kids. And so with that, I thought it was getting married. And I wanted to have stability for them. I wanted to buy a house. I was here in Austin and I qualified and I was like, I'm buying a mansion. Then I started looking around Austin. I was like, I'm living in a shack. But I wanted to buy a house and I'm not going to just, again, live in squalor. I also am very conservative. And I think that things are going to happen. So I didn't want to buy at the top of what I could afford because I didn't bet on myself. So I just bought a house. It was a nice house. And that was the house that my soon-to-be husband and I lived in after I got pregnant with the second baby, because I was like, I'm not living in this little house with 3 boys. So we started looking for another house, and we had to look at what we could afford, look at schools, look at a whole host of things. At that time, it was a buyer's market, and so we would go look at a house, and 5 seconds later, they had 15 bids on it. So we ended up building a home and hoping that the area would grow around us. When we got a divorce, I kept the house because I wanted, it was a few reasons. First, I wanted stability for the boys. They were still in high school and I wanted them to have stability, especially for the oldest. But I had to pay my husband part of equity in the home. And so my cost of living increased like 3 times as much. So I had to factor that in, like, can I still afford this house, these bills, the ongoing maintenance of this home once he leaves? And is it worth it? Because the other option was to move. At that time, it's like, you're going to move, but where? Because Austin is extremely expensive. So yeah, I can move, but I'm either going to get a smaller house, pay more, pay the same. What's the purpose? And so I decided to stay and make some sacrifices. I don't go on the biggest holidays. I don't buy what I call luxury items like I used to. I don't shop at the Pottery Barn like I'm crazy anymore. I don't go to Whole Foods every day. I don't do things like that. I make sacrifices because having stability in this home and building equity in this home is more important to me than having another pair of pants.
I think a couple things you said make sense here. One was moving out at 17. The assumption is that you moved in with someone. You didn't move on your own. You moved in with someone at 17.
I moved in with my great-grandmother, and then she passed away. But yeah, I did move in with her. I moved out of the house and moved in with her. And then I assumed the responsibility. Her house was already paid for, but paying all the bills and all of that.
So you think about the failure to launch now with a lot of kiddos that are staying in their parents' basement or staying someplace where they may not have to foot a large bill. In the neighborhood, there's this couple. I think he's a doctor. She's in the medical profession. I think she's a nurse of some sort. They got married and moved into their parents' basement. I was talking to them a couple weeks ago, and she's expecting her first child. And so them living there provides stability and the ability to save money while he's doing his residency. And you think about that leg up and the ability to have those options. That is something that you sort of wish a lot of people did have with respect to being able to afford a place to live. Again, there are obviously cons with living with your in-laws and cons of living in the basement, but they seem to have a healthy relationship with them. And then I'm reminded of a situation in college where I was in grad school and there was a young lady who was in law school and we worked at the same law firm. And one of the things that was interesting was she was living with her boyfriend at the time, and they had, as happens, they have a relationship that ended, and it was difficult for her to find a place. And this was in Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of DC, for those who are familiar with DC. She found it difficult to find a place that she could afford and set herself up for long-term success with respect to what she was trying to do with her career. And that struck me as something that I'd never experienced it before with respect to how relationships can dramatically impact your livelihood with respect to your career and where it is that you could stay, and how it impacted her commute time, how it impacted her prospects in terms of employment, how it impacted her finances. And I saw this girl grow from maybe 130 pounds to literally like 110 pounds just by stressing. She ended up subletting an apartment in someone's house. But, the housing affordability issue is something that I think we need to pay more attention to, especially as we talk about millennials and Gen Z, and whatever we can do to obviously make home ownership or make housing more affordable for them. I'm all for it.
A couple of things. I could not imagine living in my parents' or my husband's parents' anything, because I can't have sex in any of those. I can't do it. In your mother's house? Absolutely not. I remember being engaged to my husband, and we stayed with his mom, and so she was like, here's your room, and I was like, and his room is, I'm not, if you touch me, I will mace you. In your mother's home?
Oh, wow.
And then I got pregnant, and so I was so embarrassed that they knew that I got pregnant when we went on our anniversary to San Francisco. And so they were making a joke about it, and I was like, please make this stop. Like, I don't want them to know that I had sex with your son. Like, I just don't want this.
I remember when I was in college, my first girlfriend in college, when she visited, I visited her first. She lived in Atlanta, and I visited her first, and I slept in the basement of her parents' house, and she would sneak down to the basement, and we'd fool around in the basement.
Absolutely. In your mother's home, to this day, at this big age, if you touch me in your mother's home, I'm going to punch you in your kidney. Like, you better not. No. In your mom's home? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I got it into my parents' house.
Oh, God, no. I could not. Today, I still can't do it. I can't. Anyway, so with the housing thing with my son, it's one of the things that we're talking about now. Is like, I want you to start thinking about where you want to live, and then look at the cost of living there, like housing, whatever. And I said, back that out, because that's the amount of money that you're going to need to make. So you look for jobs in whatever area you're going to be able to allow you to live on your own, to do these things. And so you need to be cognizant of this. So I'm a budgeter. So you have to do that. That's one of the things that we're working on now, is like, where do you want to live? Okay, let's back that out. Anyway, so that's my thoughts. And I'm not having sex in your mama's house.
The budgeting aspect is the third receipt for politics, and that's consumption pressure. The political and cultural push to keep buying your way into belonging. And you do see that, unfortunately, with individuals who are buying houses pre-COVID. You saw a lot of individuals buy a lot of house because they wanted space, and they felt that we need all this house and we can afford all this house because interest rates were dirt cheap. And so you had individuals buy all this house and they had no furniture in it, and they could not afford the taxes. They could not afford the utilities. There's a lot of stuff that comes with. On the flip side of that, you now have, especially in major cities like Austin, Atlanta, or some of the other cities where you have a lot of these corporations that buy these houses, and you're getting a flood of homes on the market that individuals lease or rent until they can buy. And so in some cases, you'll have individuals live in an area because that's the area they want to be in. They can afford to rent in that area because it fits their image, it fits their lifestyle, but they're buying that image, they're buying that lifestyle, and they may not be able to afford it long term. And so whether it's relationships, whether it's business, or whether it's looking to be seen on the scene because you want to hang out with Miss Lynn and do her TikTok and OnlyFans stuff. That's it. When participation becomes expensive, how do relationships change for the person who cannot afford to keep saying yes?
I want to know who these people are. Like, who are these? It's like when we have these TV shows and they're like, I don't know, something like people that eat paint, and they just keep having episodes. I was like, who are these people eating paint? Like, enough of them that you can have a conversation about. I don't know these people that would put themselves in situations where every day they're stressed out. Like, why would you do that? Especially your home. Like, the home is the one place that I have to go to, and it's my sanctuary. Like, everything else that's going on in this horrible world, that I can go into my house and have peace. Why would I want to go into a house and there's no furniture, there's nothing in there, and I'm just rolling around on the floor? Like, just because the outside is beautiful and then I have no peace inside, why would I do this?
So think about it this way, because I was watching this. Atlanta is obviously a city that's big on image, as well as Miami. And one of the things that I saw was you have some of these high-end cars and you'll see a person driving a high-end car and you'll think that that person owns that high-end car. So Lynn goes out and Lynn rents a Range Rover or Lynn rents a Lamborghini to drive around in. And maybe she has an event that she needs to attend. So she wants people to see her driving that high-end car because she is pretending that she can afford that high-end car. There are individuals who will park that high-end car, take pictures in front of that high-end car, and there are other people who will come and they will set up a sign, right? And these people will come and they will charge people to take pictures in front of the high-end car, pretending that it's theirs so they can post it on the gram or post it on TikTok. And you have that going on. You have people who are house sitting or condo sitting, and they will get all the footage that they need for, again, the Look at Me generation. They will post it on the social media platforms. You think this is Lynn high-end condo overlooking Lake Travis or whatnot, and all of a sudden you're like, that's not your condo?
Thank you. Oh my God, I cannot thank you enough, because I couldn't figure out why I don't like Atlanta. Like, there's just something about Atlanta I don't like. And I don't understand a lot of what people are saying to me half the time. So that's one thing. But I like the food. I like the shopping. I was like, there's something. I just don't know what it is. And you finally helped me. It's this, I want to project this image. And I'm like, oh, that's what it is.
But it's not just Atlanta, it's New York, it's LA, it's Miami, it's anywhere that there is a...
I don't, I didn't grow up in LA. I grew up in Orange County. I'm sure it's all over the place, but I couldn't figure out why I didn't like Atlanta. And I think that it's just that.
I thought it was me that you...
I mean, I don't like you any place. I don't like you on a plate. I don't like you in a gate. I don't like you at all, Sam I Am. I don't like green eggs and ham. So that's not it. I don't like the pretense. I was on a date and the guy was saying, he goes, you look like Southern California. Your essence is Southern California. I said, you know what? That's the only place when I get off a plane that I feel comfortable. I feel at peace because I don't feel like I need to pretend. I don't feel like it's pretentious. I feel like I can just go hang out at the beach. I can do whatever and I can just be. And that's the only place that I feel like that. So
maybe he was saying Southern. When you think of Southern California, you think of pretension. I mean, it's literally Hollywood. I mean, it's literally Malibu.
I said I grew up in Orange County, so that's completely different than San Diego.
Orange County is typically pretentious.
No, it's actually not. Not when I grew up. Literally was not.
There's literally a show called The OC.
But they were the people there were like at our school. Mm-hmm. They got a pass. The surfers got a pass. Like they could just be late and they could say I was watching the tide come in, and they were dirty. Just looked like they just rolled off the beach. Nobody was trying to be anything. But that was when I grew up, and that was a long time ago. So maybe things have changed, but I always feel at home there because it's...
I think if you say LA to most people...
I know, again, LA and San Diego and San Clemente are completely 100% different.
San Diego is completely different from LA.
And San Clemente is completely different from both of them. Like, there's no comparison. It's apples and oranges.
Okay. All right. So, but I'm saying when you think of Los Angeles...
Okay, but nobody's thinking of Los Angeles.
I said Southern California.
I said specifically where I grew up, and I said I didn't spend time in LA.
You said Southern California.
I said I didn't spend time in LA.
But when you say Southern California, most people
especially that grew up in South Carolina and Atlanta and that don't have culture, yes, I can understand why that's confusing for you.
Audience, when a person says I grew up in Southern California, most people are going to assume that you're talking about LA.
I say I grew up in Southern California, they're like, where? And then I tell them, but because there's such a distinction between LA, Long Beach, San Diego, San Onofre, it's just different. It's a different feel, a different vibe.
I mean, San Diego is 2 hours.
You grew up in a small little town in South Carolina. Your culture, you don't have a lot of culture, and that's why you are where you are, because you weren't exposed to things. You're just a simple country boy with a simple country mind, like a little country mouse.
I'm happy to be a simple country boy sometimes. That said, when you think about Miami, you think about LA, you think about New York, you think about Atlanta, couple other cities in terms of just sexy. They have that it. Individuals who can be a little pretentious at times, depending upon the circles that one runs in. I think it's individuals who are putting out that image to be associated or to live beyond their means or give the impression that they are doing certain things. That's the thing that we need to obviously protect against. So what's the point? A lot of what we call relationship conflict may actually be economic pressure showing up inside the relationship. When wages no longer support the life people are expected to maintain, somebody gets blamed. When housing takes more of the household budget, every other decision gets smaller. And when belonging requires you to keep spending, saying no can begin to feel like a failure. But the pressure did not necessarily begin with the husband, the wife, the parent, or the child. It began with the man. The income coming in no longer comfortably supports the obligations going out. And when families do not name that structure clearly, they can turn a financial problem into a personal accusation. Not doing enough. You're holding us back. You should earn more. We should be able to afford this. That is how a system level pressure becomes a relationship level wound. So as you return to the main episode, pay attention to the three mechanisms we named: wage stagnation, housing affordability, and consumption pressure. For the next 90 days, watch how much of your household's take-home income becomes absorbed by fixed obligations before anyone makes a discretionary choice. If that percentage keeps rising, it means the family will have fewer options, more difficult trade-offs, and a greater chance of mistaking structural pressure for personal failure. If it stabilizes or begins to fall, it means the household is creating room to make decisions without every conversation carrying the weight of survival. Either way, have the conversation. Name the pressure before you assign the blame. Because once the math changes, the relationship has to adjust. But the people closest to you should not automatically become the enemy simply because they are the ones standing beside you when the bill arrives. And that's the point. What you out and about this week? Make the time to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, take the time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening and spending your time with us on I Take Your Point. For more unfiltered conversations like this, click the link in the description. Huge thank you to our production team. We couldn't do this without you. Quick disclaimer, the views shared are those of the host and guest and are for informational purposes only, not professional advice. Keep building your own table, take care, and be well.